Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Fallout Podcast, episode 100. They said it would never happen. Quadruple figures. Unbelievable. Joined, as always, by our crew, but tonight we have a bigger crew than ever. Stars of stage and screen and parts of the world you might not want to go to.
You could say all four corners of the earth.
Phil, how are you doing?
I'm in fine feckle, mate. I'm really looking forward to watching you corral and herd the cats this evening. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
I have no idea how it's going to work. Alistair, how are you?
Double digits.
Unbelievable. Alistair, how are you doing?
Double figures. Yay. Welcome to heaven.
Nice. Ezra, you're on board. Back out of the woods for some more madness.
Hi, it's -8 and I'm drinking cold beer in an unheated room.
And joined by all friends of the show, Steve, ChurchoftheFall. How you doing?
Bless you. Morning. Yeah, not bad. A bit stressed because I'm doing. I might as well plug this because there's literally dozens of people listening to. Well,
almost as many as are in the room.
Yeah, almost. I'm doing a new stand-up show on the 15th of February in Leicester, at Leicester Comedy Festival, called Oh Jeremy Corbyn. So, and I haven't quite finished exactly writing it, preparing it yet. But anyway, I'm in the love of the fall now. Mark E. Smith wouldn't worry, would he? He'd just rock up.
Not at all. It's 6 years gone. Rest in peace, Mark. And we've got Spen back, who joined us last week, which was delightful. And now he's back for the big one. How you doing, Spencer?
I'm all right. Sorry for gate crashing last week, but it was a pleasant gate crash, I hope. And, I'm all right. A bit hungover today. I was gigging last night, so I'm knackered, and B, I'm a bit hungover. Gig tonight, so
nice.
Yeah, happy days.
Good. Rock and roll.
Rock. It's more roll than rock these days.
Oh, well.
Joined by Danny No. I think you've been on more than anyone else. Been on more than me.
Yeah,
the Guru.
100 episodes. I never thought I'd see the day.
Unbelievable. We've run out of stuff at about 20 episodes as well. It's like we're just basically trawling through your blogs for any scraps that we can make an episode out of.
How many times will you have had to talk about every song by the time you get to the end of this?
It's now starting to dawn on me that it's increasingly becoming a worse and worse idea.
Didn't I say right at the beginning, you've gone about this all wrong?
You're very right.
And you were right.
Just men of a certain age you got to do, you know what I mean? Certain age and certain, great taste in music. What else are you going to do except talk about the fall?
Nothing. Happily joined by Leon Jumblesale. How you doing, Leon?
Hello, all the full podders and Stephen and Danny. Was involved in a reggae dub night last night, so a little bit worse for wear this morning. But I'll behave myself. You can be guaranteed of that. It's
glad to have you on board.
Paul Cannon's robust enough to talk about infinitely, so there's no problem with 100+ shows.
That's the spirit.
And if we can keep this to under 4 hours, that would be a miracle in and of itself, I think. So, and finally, for people in the room, we've got Max, who's I just finished listening to that fantastic mix you did of fall dance rave stuff. Thank you very much. How you?
I feel okay, but my voice is a bit croaky.
Yeah,
sound like my great aunt Ivy, who used to smoke 60 a day. That's it.
Well, we're coming for every single album. You can do hand signals if your voice gives out. So the way we're going to do this is we've got 5 levels of tier from Renegade Genius, then Fantastic Life, Passable in the middle. There is Mad and there is Bad and there is Sad down there in 4th, and the rest are paced at the bottom. Thankfully, I had Danny's flickering lexicon concordance to look for some of these things. So once again, your service has been invaluable. So what we will do is I will pick out 2 people who will get a first stab to either agree or disagree on where an album should go. And then everybody else can feel free to jump in should they want to. I do want to say, on a slightly more serious note before we get on, thoughts and prayers going out to Steve Hanley at this time. So our thoughts are with you, Steve, standing out loud. So what we'll do is I'll pick an album at random. I'll throw it up there. I'll put 3 names and we'll see first. So the first one is going to be Shift Work. And we've got Spencer going up against or with Danny. So the 2 of you, you get a chance. You can agree or disagree on this, but where would you put Shift Work in those 5 levels?
Well, for me, it's not one of the stronger albums. It's okay. The problem for me with this, when I was listening to it at the beginning, it was one of them albums I kind of liked a bit. And if I like a few songs early doors, it's going to wear thin with me after about 2 days. And that's kind of what happened with this. It was nice at the time, Pittsfield dialects and things like that.
Yeah.
Great.
Where are you going to put it, Spen? Which level?
I'll put it in. I'll probably put that in passable.
Okay. Danny, counter that or agree?
No, I kind of agree with that. It was one I really liked at the time. I do remember looking at the list of songs. There's some really good stuff there. It's got Edinburgh Man on it, which I remember hearing that and thinking, well, that's a bit different and all of that, at the time. But it's kind of passable. It's still good, but in terms of the total body of work, I'd put it at passable.
Yeah, anyone else feel free to jump in on that. We got putting it at passable.
I'm gonna jump in. I am gonna jump in here, and I'm gonna say this is a dreadful album. This is not passable at all. And I'm gonna use 4 words to prove my point.
The book
of
lies. That's not enough to damn the album, Philip.
No.
Rose, we've got Edinburgh Man.
It's mediocre production. It's phoned in songs. I think this should be well lower.
I'd like to chip in as well. I think it's kind of like 4-tier stuff. This it's like there is some quality there, but it's the major label stuff where it was a time where I loved the Fall, but they were just putting out these albums that I thought were like crap, and it was really disappointing.
Well said. Well said, that man.
No, it was just a different form. It was like I think it was a time when they were struggling. But there you go.
I'd agree with that. The writing's not good. The one I most listen now is Sinister Waltz because of its weirdness. Other than that, it's kind of like it's an album full of filler, isn't it?
Well, let's see. What does Stephen think?
Well, I'm sitting here in my Church of the Fall vestments, so obviously I'm a bit biased here. But I just like to say, Paste or wherever you're going to put this in, that's still above most of Ollie Mersey's albums. It's relative Paste is what I'm saying.
It's passable. Paste is the bottom level. We're not saying it's that bad. Put it in the middle.
Idiot Jewish Showland, a fantastic satire on the derivative Manchester seed. Your flappy kecks cannot hide your competitive plagiarism. What a great line that was. You know what I mean?
Can I put a word in for shift work? It's one of my favourites. I think some of that is because when I heard it, I was, young. It was one of the first ones I got into at the time it came out, and that's obviously skewed my perception. I think the band play really well on it. It's a stripped back full. It's reflective, mature, funny lyrics, great musicianship. There's no massive standout tracks. I think it's just sort of solid. The full wit, they're most disciplined and just song-like structures.
Yeah, he was probably at the height of his alcohol issues as well, then, possibly. I don't know. He didn't look so good, did he? What about A Lot of Wind? He's hilarious.
I'm keeping it at passable.
I've got to disagree. This is a great album. It's one of the last ones I listened to, and I think it's the gem of their AOR adult-oriented rock phase. They sound like the Lighthouse Family on it. And if you want to, I think that's just fantastic.
Good.
I mean, Brilliant. What other fucking underground band has made an AOR album like this? I think it's a wonderful piece of work.
Somebody from the Lighthouse Family is listening to this, though. Their chest will be swelling. You know what I mean?
Indeed. And I'm putting Ezra up against Phil, and we got Fall Heads Roll.
Ooh, Fall Heads Roll. It's a decent album. It's got tons of great energy about it, hasn't it? And but it's just. I'm gonna say it. It stinks of the pub. It's a pub rock album, really. It's basically a very, very good status quo album for my money.
Oh, I like.
There's some decent stuff on it. There's some great stuff on it, but I mean, I Can Hear the Grass Grow. Come on,
not the best cover they did. No.
Have a word, Ezra. Where you putting it?
I'm curious as to why anything that stinks of the pub is a bad thing. I love stinking of pubs.
Makes us all feel good.
I think this is a great record. I mean, a lot of people with this incarnation of the group, it's Country on the Click, which is the one that's heralded as, one of the best of the late period. But I'm
Danny, I'll let you speak on the mid-period issue soon. I know it's roused you up.
I'm always conflicted between this and Country on the Click. With this incarnation of the group, I think they're both excellent records. And of course, this has got Blindness on it. So,
Noted. Danny, mid-period, late period.
Well, it's not late period, is it? It's mid. It's in the middle of their output. For heaven's sake, let's get this right.
It is number 24 of 31, though, so depends how we're counting it. But yes, in terms of chronology, it's closer to the middle.
Well, if you're talking periods, you are talking chronology, aren't you? I mean, that's...
I guess so. Where are we putting it, though, gentlemen?
I'm going to put this definitely in the bottom half. It has got Aspen on it, though, which is beautiful. So I'm going to say there is mad, there is bad, and there is sad.
Oh, that's pretty low. Where are you putting it, Ezra?
Fantastic Life for me, at least.
Anyone want to chip in where you should go?
For me, it's like it's half filler and half killer, but the killer is like really, really good.
Yeah.
So it should be above the middle.
It's above it. There's not that much filler, is it? Sure. I mean, like, you know, as you say, Midnight Aspen's a work of art, is it not? It's beautiful and not the greatest cover. I Can Hear the Grass Grow, but yeah, some banging, as you say, banging pub sort of bangers. You know what I mean?
Is Trust in Me unique in being the only Fall song that doesn't have Marky Smith?
Eleni does a couple, right?
Yeah.
But to have somebody who's not in the Fall singing on it, or at all, it might be. Danny, is it?
Possibly, but I don't know. I've not done my detailed research into that.
Isn't there a song with Birthday?
That's
something like that, isn't it?
There's another story song as well, isn't there, about this car sale or something?
Yeah. Well, and also Portugal listening to.
Hands of Billy. That was with a member of the Fall singing, wasn't it? So.
Yeah,
it was.
So non-Fall members. Anyway, I'm tempted to put up a Fantastic Life just to annoy Phil, but also the room seems to suggest that it's much higher than where he would put it. And what does he know? So next up, that would bring us to Remit. I know that if Steve Pringle, Falling Fives, were here, he would argue very strongly for this being a late era classic. But we've got Alistair and Steve get to decide where Remit goes. Alistair, where are you putting Remit in this?
I think it's below Head's Roll. It's an okay LP. I think it's better than Shift Work.
Yeah, pre-MDMA years, Hittite Man, Kinder of Spine. We've given all of those lots of love.
I mean, the Hittite Man's absolutely fucking brilliant.
Yeah, it's got a lot of sludge for me. Mid stuff, Irish jam song, Lodestones. Steve, Remit, where would you put it?
If my namesake Steve Pringle says it's really good, I'll definitely give it a relook. Some Fall thing in Cork, Limerick, yeah, load of academics, you know, universities paying him to talk about the Fall. Well done, good gig. And this lad, he did a talk specifically about this album, and it's massively underrated. I'll have to find it out. But yeah, I mean, I've got happy memories because I took Jack to see the Fall at the Royal Exchange, because the Fall were, of course, art as well as banging tunes. The Royal Exchange are doing a series of sort of iconic bands on a Sunday night, and I remember him playing Hittite Man, and it was great in the theatre in the round of the Royal Exchange.
Yeah.
So that's great stuff. I mean, Lodestones. I mean, I know, but it's just some good heavy rock. I think I've got mates who are into what they call Number of the Beast, Iron Maiden. I just can't get Iron Maiden. They keep trying to convince me, but I think they'd like Lodestones. It's a good bit of heavy metal, you know.
Yeah.
William Ray's a great sort of pop tune.
Is indeed. Give me a level. Come on. Passable, Fantastic Life, Mad, Bad, Sad.
What's the top one, bottom one? Sorry.
Renegade Genius.
I'll call it a Fantastic Life now.
Oh.
Just that's just on the basis Steve Pringle. I want to give it a listen again. So I shall defer to him.
Anyone want to counter that Remit is in the second tier of Fall albums?
It's too much sad for me. And it belongs in Mad, Bad, Sad, definitely.
For me, yeah, I agree with that.
I think, how long was he at it at this point? You know what I mean? We're talking 2000, 2007, 13th of May, indeed, 2013. He says on my computer. I mean, he's been at it for years. You gotta say, you know, who's producing sort of anything much different.
But I'm gonna let it pass with Fantastic Life.
Right, too.
Absolute madness. We'll do a couple more and then I'll detour into some of the people who've sent in kind words and etc. Let's go next for Wonderful and Frightening. And that's it. Me and Spen, I think. I'm losing my... I knew this was a bad idea already. Me and Spencer.
Incidentally, that's Canada Dry. It's not a bottle of wine.
Right.
More fool you.
I know. Or is it wine in a Canada Dry bottle?
It's 11 o'clock. The pubs are opening in Britain. They've been open.
$500 bottle of Canada Dry.
Yeah. It's Wonderful and Frightening. Surely this is an easy one, Spen. Where are you putting it?
That is great. It's mega. It's right at the top. I love it. Fantastic writing, fantastic playing, creepy and weird, fabulous.
Yeah.
So I'd put that as
Renegade Genius.
Yeah. That one, love it.
I'm torn between whether it's quite that level, but it's definitely head and shoulders above Remy, which Lay of the Land.
Good job, Steve. Pringle's not here.
Yeah. Craigness, Disney's Dream Debase.
Bugger.
Lay of the Land is wonderful. The Home Secretary had a weird look. Tiles drip from its roof. Beautiful lyric,
beautiful.
Lay of the Land. Fantastic.
I am going to put it in Renegade Genius. Anybody want to add or
I've got to agree with that.
Yes, it's great lineup, great tunes.
It was the first Fall album I ever heard, I think. Not when it was released, a little bit after, but so I always regarded it fondly. But there's some great stuff on there, and it's well written songs as well.
Yeah, and a nice range, and it
Hanley Scanlon in the prime, yeah.
Absolutely. And Bricks is on board.
Yeah, it gives it the pop edge here and there, doesn't it? Yeah.
Sweet. I don't think there'll be many people arguing. In fact, a few people on Facebook this week were saying that this was their top, especially if you count that Escape Route version, the cassette version. That has a slightly different track listing. Alrighty, one more. We got Middle Class Revolt. Pip, you're back up against Danny, with Danny against 4. Middle Class Revolt. I know Pip's got a soft spot for this, haven't you?
Yeah, this is a bit of a nostalgia one for me, but I appreciate the fact that it's not a favorite album for a lot of people, but I think we've done a good job of actually presenting a fair showing for this during the pod. I think we've been pretty honest about how good the songs are, and it just suffers a little bit because it's a bit mushy, the production on it, isn't it? It depends what we're making our mind up on, doesn't it? Are we talking about it as a finished product, or are we talking about our enjoyment of it? Because I think this for me is probably passable. It's passable. I think there's some lovely songs on it, and you've got to get into its sound. It's a bit like Dragnet, but in like the opposite end of the polarity, isn't it? So yeah, I'll play the 3. I'll put it in the middle.
Passable. I mean, what Behind the Counter, Reckoning, Dean Ways.
Well, I mean, Hey Student, I played on the second Stray Dog Cafe gig. I think we opened up with Hey Student or a version of it, and I love Junkman. I know it's not a favourite one, and it's got its own humour about it, hasn't it, as well? With like $500 bottle of wine and all that.
It's one of my favourites. Danny, where are you putting it in the ranking?
Yeah, I think probably around passable. It's that period for me where sometimes get called the decline of Scanlon, doesn't it? Where he's not writing in the way he was before, he's writing differently, and it's not quite the same. But some of those songs are really crunchy songs. I think I'd agree the production's not fantastic, but so, you know, M5 in particular is probably the standout one there for me. Hey Student rocks along there. There's some good stuff. Crunchy is definitely the word. There's a bit of a metallic edge to a lot of it, I think. I don't mean metallic like heavy metal metallic.
Almost a digital kind of thing.
Yeah.
We were going on about Reckoning last week, and that is beautiful. And yeah, for its late period for Craig, but standout for me in its whole career, possibly.
I'll save my energy for later battles in this friendly war, but I'll settle for passable. But you got to say, I mean, some great. I mean, 15 Ways, like the riposte to Paul Simon's 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. Very clever. Middle Class Revolt. I'll stop plugging myself in a bit, but I'm hoping to do Church of the Fall again sometime, somewhere later this year. And Class features quite heavily in Church of the Fall. So I love that song. Everything you want is everything you see in Middle Class Revolt. Being a like council flat kid with a chip on my shoulder, I love that song and that line. I'll settle for passable.
Can't argue with that. There's some standouts, but I think I will go with a mid tier. I'm just going to take a little bit of a detour. We've had a few people write in. So Bob and Hiram, who do the Puritan's Guide to the Fall, which is really great and somewhat less known than obviously the big ones like Oh Brother and all of those other well-known folk podcasts. Danny, you've been on the Puritans, right?
I think I've been on them all. I've been on that a couple of times, I think. Yeah,
they're really nice chaps. Each episode is about one song, which is really cool to dig into the personal take on each song. So they've said nothing too shocking in their favourite list. Hex, Perverted, This Nation's Saving Grace, Wonderful and Frightening. In the 90s, favourite meant most listened to. It was probably the B-sides, but that's kind of cheating. As for least favourite, they run from Shift Work to Middle Class Revolt and rarely get much play from me. Songs I really enjoy, but as albums, they don't hold up. Ah, well, let's move on and let's do Your Future, Our Clutter, And that would be Ezra against Steve.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad I got this one because I might cry. I didn't really get into the Fall till it was around Imperial Wax Solvent, to be honest. I had photos taken by Michael Poller, some actors' shots, who did obviously the cover with Klaus Kaskin, This Nation Saving Grace, and he started talking about the Fall, and I got into the Fall. So just when I'm around this period, sadly, I missed 70, God knows. I did work it out for the show. Probably about 60% of the Fall. I just think this is who's producing something as good as this over 30 years into the game? No, nobody. I mean, mate, who's big into Gary Morris Rowe, if you're listening, he's big into Iron Maiden amongst other things. And I took him his only Fall gig. We saw a very quiet gig in Manchester at the Ritz one Sunday afternoon, one of them small festivals that not many people turned up to. And he said it was the best intro of a song he'd ever heard.
Right.
He can drum. He's a drummer, and his brother is, so he knows his drumming. I don't think he ever quite got properly into the faith. I'll keep trying. The start of that song, the start of the album, you know.
Where are you putting it, Steve?
I'm gonna have to put it in. I'll put it in Fantastic Life. I suppose I've got to count too many in Renegade Genius.
Leon, but where are you putting it?
Yeah, I do think it's the best of that last run of albums, which I don't think is it's not an unusual view. I like it's got a uniform feel to the whole album, themes running throughout, like hospitals and sickness, so it gives it quite kind of, it's got unexpected choices made on it which sort of lift it beyond normal garage rock. So similarly like to what they did on Country on the Click, the mix of electronics and garage rock and esoteric subject matter just lift it up to a sort of higher tier of Fall album, I think. So for me, it's their late period masterpiece. Probably doesn't reach the heights of their earlier masterpieces, perhaps just because that garage rock as opposed to, next tier stuff. But I would definitely I prefer it to Full Heads Roll and Remit, definitely.
Okay, let's pick it up there in Fantastic Life. I can't really shake at this point the fact that to me, the theme, the connection between them all is great, but the songs to me sound very, very similar. And now after spending hours trying to work out whether that was Howard from the Halifax commercials, Kieran Metlin who said it was, right?
Yeah, but it isn't. I don't know who it is, but it's the wrong shaped glasses for Howard from the Halifax advert. If you ever see him pictured with anything other than round glasses,
everyone else on the cover is recognisable, though. I think, aren't they? We know who all the others are. Maybe the mystery will never be solved. But
maybe it's a random picture. Like Tad, the grunge band, found a Polaroid in a bin and used it as the photo on their 8-Way Santa album, and people on the picture ended up finding the album and suing the group.
The Nirvana baby's been suing Nirvana for the last 10 years, I think.
That's right. Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff on the later albums where it's just from magazines and so on. So
yeah. All right. So let's see what else we got here. We got a little album we call This Nation's Saving Grace, and we got Max and me. What do we think, Max? Where would you put This Nation's Saving Grace? It's had very little love in the competition.
I noticed that. It's quite surprising. This was the first full album I ever heard, and so I'm always going to have like a really, really special relationship with it. I only realised that Steve doesn't play on it probably like 5 years ago, which is like really mental. I probably don't love it as much as I used to. I mean, it's either 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5. I probably cooled on it slightly, but it's sort of like an old girlfriend that I'll always have fond memories of.
It's very hard not to put it up there right at the top, but that doesn't leave us a lot of space for those ones that.
Brendan,
Alistair,
can I chip in on this one? Right, you said it's not had a lot of love from on the podcast.
I think you particularly said it was terrible.
No, I love this one. But I mean, like fucking got the quantifier LA, Spoiled Victorian Child, I Am Dapple Suzuki. Fucking brilliant. It's just you lot ignorant bastards.
Dama Suzuki's still in, but yeah, I mean, Spoiled Victorian Child's one of my favourites, and it went out. LA, Ezra will never stop talking about it. We voted that one out.
Yeah, Brendan. Also, I think it's fucking brilliant as well. I'm for this writing at the top.
If we all love this album, why did you put all the songs out?
He's called it.
You're the one who chose what songs they were going up against.
No, that's
I know in my good conscience what I voted for, which was the good one.
Ezra.
Other people voted for the bad ones, Brendan.
All right, you can go and Renegade.
I only vote for what's good.
All is forgiven.
I think the podcast sometimes, I think people are swayed by not being too predictable. So it'd be like, oh yeah, let's chuck LA out and keep like this piece of shit in because people weren't expecting that.
I don't know what it was up against, though. Often it's against something half decent, and that's why things like LA went out.
Yeah, so I suppose it's tempting to have a hot take, isn't it? And, you know, put this one bit down. But I mean, the peaks of this album, Damo and the Quantifier, etc., just, you know, they're so great in the public consciousness. This is one of the full albums you sort of, is canon, isn't it? You start with it. It's on the best albums of all time list.
There's also something about the sum of its parts being greater. Do you know what I mean? It's like the Middle Class Revolt thing or Dragnet. It's like when you get into the album, it works as an album. It works as an album in a way that the separate pieces don't really sort of demonstrate the same way.
So this was early on in the competition before I started realizing that we would put out all our best songs if I didn't at least try and keep them away from each other, because it went up against Slate Slags in the first round, like in episode 4, and that's why it went out. But it did have a chance to come back in the second chance bag, and it didn't have to have LA there. But it's a great album. I totally agree. Let us go next to Curious Orange. We have Ezra up against Al. Al, where are you going to put Curious Orange, the album?
It's in between the top tier and the second tier for me. It's not one of the greatest, but it's fucking good. You know, you got like Jerusalem on the Big New Prince. There's some fucking Carcass, Doggy's Life, Van Plague, Cab It Up. That was B-side for me for a single. But we're still debating that one, I think, isn't it? Aren't we? The Deadbeat Descendant, Cab It Up, which is the A side. I don't know.
There has to be one. Can't have a double A side. It's not allowed.
But it's a fucking good one, but not top tier.
Right, Ezra, where you put in Curious Orange?
This is a tough one for me. Somewhere between Passable and Fantastic Life. Fantastic Life, because it's got some very, very strong tracks, some big favourites. Cab It Up, Curious Orange.
Bad News Girl.
Jerusalem, yeah. Jerusalem. No, not Bad News Girl so much. But that's it. And then on the other hand, you've got Bad News Girl, Windfall CD 2080 AD, which apart from maybe having... It's definitely maybe in the top 5 full song titles of all time, but it's probably in the bottom 5 of actual full tracks of all time. For me, anyways. So, yeah, it's a real mixed bag.
Slightly different. Fantastic Life. Al had it in between the top 2, and you've got it up there as well.
Yeah, I'd put it one in between first and second. I mean, you got to remember, it's part of a bigger art concept, isn't it? When I was up in Edinburgh last year before doing Church of the Fall, I was lucky enough that there was a Michael Clarke exhibition up at Dundee V&A. So it was only an hour and a bit's drive, and obviously there's lots of his stuff. They had a room just on this, and it's an art concept as well, isn't it? Not just banging tunes. You got to take it as a whole.
Fair enough.
If it needed proving the fuller art, this proved it.
Indeed. All right, Fantastic Life. There he goes. It's up there. Chris Barrow of Wiggins thrown in his opinions as well. So he reckons the best are Curious Orange. He reckons the best fall album. Then Perverted by Language. Wonderful. Danny, can't you do? It's his opinion. You're not allowed to shake your head.
I have opinions immune from opinion. I don't.
On this podcast, the first person that says something, that's what we all believe, and we just have to go with it. So the best album is Curious Orange, then Perverted by Language, Wonderful and Frightening, This Nation's Saving Grace, and Fall Heads Rolled Out. The worst, according to Chris Barrow of Wigan, are You Are Missing Winner, Friends Experiment, Reformation, Ersatz GB, and then Room to Live, controversially, is his
favourite fall tune, just to remind everyone as well, Systematic Abuse.
It is, Chris.
Right.
We'll come back on and we'll do a full hour.
Why not just do a show on systematic abuse?
Why not do a whole podcast on it? That's what I reckon.
Yeah.
What we'll do is we'll take a little bit of a break, because somehow I misled Phil into making a whole bunch of notes on some songs. I put together my own version of probably the best, I'd say 12, 13 fall songs. And so just sit back for 5 minutes, we'll have a bit of a listen. I would say these are objectively the best. So no opinions required from the rest of you on this. Just have a listen. Oh, and here's Ben. Brilliant.
Ben Wallers?
Is he there?
Yes.
Hey, Ben. Hello. We're just
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, we're going well. We're about 3 hours in. We've listened to 4 albums.
Oh, you lucky devils.
Who is that?
Who is that? Well, he's called Brendan.
Hello.
Now you're so can I... Hello. How's
Great
it going?
to see you, Ben.
Gonna listen
Is
to
it a proper rock star?
Yeah, we're
Stuff
gonna
for the
listen.
little children to come onto the fall.
We're going to listen to objectively the best fall songs now for about 5 minutes, and then we'll get back in. So go on,
Right.
Phil.
It's still one step ahead of you.
We're not allowed to talk over the music.
I still believe in the R&R dream.
You're not allowed to talk over the fall.
That's primal scream.
You don't have to spell it.
You can talk over these. These are all right.
It's okay. The early fall fans, early in years.
Eggheads, boneheads, cubes. We were early and we were late.
You want me to play that again?
Been to the park. The park. Just been to the park. I've just been to the park there. We went to the park.
You know what? I love it. Every time you've been on, Ben, you've turned it into the karaoke. She's fantastic. It means that we get exclusive Ben Waller cover versions of The Fall every time.
Living the dream.
So I want you on every episode.
Well, you know I'd be there if I could. There. You can wash your
Roll around.
You don't see rabbits being walked down the street, and you don't see many cats on leads. Dogs, pet dogs, dogs rapacious, wet dog, owner of dogs, slow with big two-chest fucker, dog, black collar sense, East German refugee, back switch and crack pathetic, of earth life, lousy dog, role model for infidel dog house.
Objectively the best fall records of all time. So we had Live at the Witch Trials, the WMC Blob 59, Papal Visit, Dog is Life, and then Crew Filth. Phil, as his customer, I'm coming to you first.
He did this to me this week, right? He sent this out as a joke, and he didn't tell me it was a joke. And so I've got a full show's notes with all these bloody songs on it. So yes, very funny, Brendan. Let's crack on with the show.
What's your favourite?
They were lovely. They were all my favourites.
Dog is Life.
Papal Visit, classic.
Brilliant. It is brilliant.
The choices there, a great example of they do the deconstruction thing. They've been doing it from the start to the fucking end. And I love just deconstruction of music. Beautiful stuff.
Full of mistakes. Can't believe it. All right, let's crack on. We'll go back to the second half of the objectively best fall records of all time later, but still, let's crack on and see if we can get at least 5 or 6 of these on this list. So what we're doing here, for people who have joined us halfway through the podcast, which you wouldn't do because you listen to podcasts from the start, we're putting these ranking. And I'm choosing people at random. So Leon and Ben, I'm going to give you an album, and I want you to tell me which of these levels: Renegade Genius, Fantastic Life, Passable, there is Mad, Bad and Sad, and the rest are paced. Where would you put it? And we're going to go for an easy one. Are You Are Missing Winner? So Ben and Leon, what ranking would you put Are You Are Missing Winner?
I think my problem with it is that the best track from the era is not on the album, which is Wake Up in the City. There's some terrible music on this album. It's a bit of a Room to Live job, isn't it? Where everything gets cut back to the bare essence and it's all garagey and unproduced. It seems completely unmastered, but I like that about it. I like that it's rough and ready and like raw and everything. So if I'm in the mood for it, it's a great record. So I wouldn't put it right at the bottom. I'd put it one up from the bottom. Mad, Bad and Sad, probably. Yeah, but
Ben, where would you put Are You Are Missing Winner?
It's a very difficult question because I like it. I put it there in the middle, Passable. There we go. Because there's lots of albums by The Fall that I don't like at all. And this one I really like, but I don't listen to it very often. And you know, I remember when it came out, and I felt good about it. Like it was, you know, when you say it was a return to form, it was like that for me. But I'm not sure if it was really to do with the music or anything like that. I think the title's very good. I really like the title, and and I like that people hated it as well. And that thing with Room to Live, you know, I never really understood that, because I just thought that was one of the main albums, and it's one of my favorite ones. And then I would read afterwards people saying that it wasn't very well received and people didn't think it was very good and it was patchy. And I like that about Are You Are Missing Winner.
Stuff like Crop Dust, My Ex-Classmates' Kids, and The Acute, we've loved. It's done better than this station's Saving Grace.
It's an album that's grown on me a lot from doing this podcast.
Yeah.
I wouldn't really have rated it before, but they've really, really grown on me, the songs.
Yeah.
I would rather listen to this album than lots of other albums that came out after 1989, which is when that's my cutoff year, after which I found it difficult to listen to their new albums until Levitate. And after Levitate, I liked lots of other records. But
yeah,
I would say if by the cover, we've got Renegade Genius. That's the best album cover they ever did. Maybe Hex Induction Hour might have a bit of a better cover, but I just think that cover is pure poetry and genius. Them fucking tracks are brilliant. Like, and as Al was saying earlier about the deconstruction thing, like tearing it all apart, and it's like it's so hilariously lo-fi. Maybe my favorite moment on the album is Ibis Afro Man, where you get that sound when you like hold a smartphone too close to like an amp or something, and you get that hideous kind of like weird feedback, chittering insect feedback.
Very nice. All right, it's going impassable. I can't really justify it going any higher than that. But so let's grab Extricate next. Let's have Spen and Steve going up.
Chicago Now jumps out for me there. That's a great sort of doomy sort of song. And Hillary's, again, hilarious. You got Billy's Dead, bit different again. Apparently not about his dad, about somebody in the pub, was it? I don't know, or one of his dad's mates. But I'm Frank. I managed to get that on the chain with McConey and Radcliffe and McConey. So
nice.
A bit of a,
Grandma's back.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I've got to save me Gunpowder a bit, so you know, I'd put it sort of. I'll put it above passable. I mean, Telephone Thing. What a great variety, you know.
Steve, I think you know with Telephone Thing that's possibly like the first example of Fall dipping the toe into sort of like dance music. And I remember like you know the Manchester International when it came out and like hearing it on the fucking sound system there, and it was just like whoa, the best hit in you. Fucking brilliant.
Nice.
Yeah.
Spen.
This is one of the albums I struggle with. This album, it's a bit lightweight and not one of my particular favourites, if I'm honest. But I'm equally conflicted because live, those songs were great. Some of the songs were great, I should say, not them all. But where I would place that, I'd put it in passable, but I'm tempted to put it a bit lower. It's, I think it's a transitional album. And something's changing in the band, something's changing in society and the environment, and you can see it in the music. For me, it's inconsistent, and I don't really like it that much. But as an album, it's passable. It's got some good stuff on it, but it's got a lot of Bricks era pop as well inside it for me. You know, a bit of a legacy from that, which I'm not a great fan of that stuff either, if I'm honest. But yeah, passable for me, I think.
I give you that. I mean, it sounds good, and I think Bricks has gone and Martin Brammer's back just for a little while, and that changes the sound. But transitional, I think, going from essentially Friends, Curious Orange into Shift Work, yeah, it's an in-between album for me.
Just going to say, it's an example, really, that the poppiness didn't stop when Bricks left at all, did it? They actually got poppier after she left.
Yeah, in many ways, yeah. Shift Work and Infotainment Scan, yeah, in a different type of pop for sure, but they didn't lose that pop edge, and that's the argument that even before she arrived, they'd started moving in that direction. That you could argue.
Because I look at the track listing, and Mark, I think, I don't know, deliberately called Martin Brahma by his real name, didn't he? Beddington on the track list. So I'd forgotten. For Martin Brahma, you know, another genius. he's got to go up one, for me. He can't be just middling. He's got to be at the second rank.
For me, this album sounds like everybody recorded all of the parts separately. I think this album just really, really suffers from that. It's got no soul. There's no connection between the musicians.
I will give you that there's definitely something missing. It should be higher than passable, but it's not, I think.
I mean, I think I love this, but I think I can view it entirely objectively because it's kind of where I jumped on, really. But I think what's interesting when you look at the whole arc of the albums is the Fall are often in opposition to what's going on at time in the culture. But also you can definitely see, and they engage with it. And with this is sort of a new pop era, post-hip-hop, post-house, the emergence of Manchester music. You can see it all through their catalogue. This nation's saving grace is a time of roots music with the Pogues. And then Ben Sinister's goth, and Wonderful and Frightening World, the emergence of new pop music in the sort of 84, and throughout the whole career, really, even up to Erzatz GB, where you get like metal and people are into things like Sun, and they're always engaging, but also in opposition to what's happening in the culture, which is really interesting when you look at the work as a whole. I think
all the while talking about how shit everything is and how they've got no connection.
Yeah. With extra care, it's more interesting than it is enjoyable to listen to, though. Do you know what I mean? It's like I can stroke my chin all day to it, but it's not an album that I'm going to keep going back to.
Yeah. The best one out of the stuff that they did on a major.
Oh, well, we'll come to that. Next up, me and Max are going to have a look at a little lesser known album, Live at the Witch Trials. Max?
The Fall had 2 debut albums, didn't they? There's so much great stuff on this. If you consider it as like a band's first punk album, still in the heyday of first punk albums, it's an absolute scorcher. Yeah, Fantastic Life for me.
I'm with you on Fantastic Life. I don't think it's quite up there with the very top tier, but yeah, No Christmas for Junkies, Industrial Estate, Future and Past music scene, for a debut LP, yeah, phenomenal. But there was better to come, not least of all, Remit. Anyone else want to chip in on where Witch Trials might be?
I think that's about right, isn't it? It's a great debut album, but obviously it would improve after that. There's only one thing I struggle with, and I don't like the snare sound. I think it sounds like a tom. It's a bit thick, Great drumming, fabulous drumming from Carl Burns, but the snare sound for me, I don't really like.
Drums on that LP, I just think they should have detuned the toms. The two sort of
dead clean, aren't they? Yeah, I know. Great album, great, fabulous drumming. It's the snare sound for me, Alistair. I hate the snare sound on that. It's not got that snap of a snare, but that's just me. It doesn't take away from the album.
It's not Phil Collins' drum sound, though.
Drum talk, innit? Nice.
Not quite what we're judging, is it? We're judging them against each other, not against the rest of the world.
Aye, indeed. So Michael Lee is our Patreon. He's a mysterious chap. I've invited him to come on a bunch of times, but he's not agreed yet. But he said there's no bad proper Fall albums, although there's a few stinkers and a glut of shoddy live releases. The run of releases from 79 to 80 is amazing, and after that they were never quite at the same level. I think the switch to CDs is an important factor, which I will expand upon later in this message. 10 years of sheer brilliance, she says. Dragnet, Grotesque, Slate's Hex Induction Hour, Room to Live, Perverted by Language, Wonderful and Frightening, This Nation's Saving Grace, Ben Sinister, Curious Orange, and he says there's only 2 tracks that he doesn't like from all those albums, and that is Papal Visit and Spoiled Victorian Child, 2 of my favourites. He then goes on to say Fantastic Life. His next section would be Light User, Levitate, Marginal Suite, Unutterable, Are You a Missing Winner, Country on the Click, Heads Roll, and Reformation. Great albums, but need a bit of pruning, and maybe the CD era gave them more time, and that actually reduced quality. Criticism I've heard of a lot of bands when they suddenly had 70 minutes instead of 35, 40 to play around with. He then goes on to say, I feel like Alan Minter is his next level down, where he puts Witch Trials, Friends Experiment, Extricates, Shift Work, Middle Class Revolt, Imperial Wax, Your Future, Clutter, and Remit. He says they've got some high points, but he doesn't reach for them. Then we're down to the good but not great, where he puts Code Selfish, Infotainment Scan, Cerebral Caustic, and Ersatz, which I would somewhat agree with. And finally, he puts Sublingual Tablet and New Facts Emerge right down at the bottom. And Michael, I cannot, in all good conscience, get on board with that. Those are 2 of my favorite LPs, But let's move on. So Marshall Suite, we got Pip and Leon.
Yeah, like a new beginning for the Fall. A weird wake. They sounded contemporary again in a way they hadn't since probably Extra Cut. I reckon they sounded like didn't sound like old style or old production style at the time. Is quite snappy. Smith leaning on new collaborators, but ultimately I think it was a success. He showed that he was able to get the vision of the Fallout regardless of who he was working with, really. You know, at the time it seemed like the Marky Smith vision was coming through. Shake Off is like top 10 full track for me. I love that tune. I love Touch Sensitive. What a great disco track. But there is filler. There's a lot of experimentalism, but it's great fun to listen to. I would put it definitely above average or just above average. What's below Fantastic Life again? I keep forgetting.
Passable.
Passable. Go on. Passable.
All right.
Can I put them all in Passable?
They're
all
all
of them.
passable.
All of the albums.
Fair enough. Phil, what are you putting in Marshall Suite?
So I'm just looking at the tier list that we've got there, and there's nothing in the bottom two yet. And I think, I mean, for my money, I think Extra Cat probably should be in the bottom two. And I wonder whether this one should be for me. I don't mind this album when it's on at all, and there's some great tunes on it. When I flick through the track listing on this, there's nothing that I'm going to go, oh yeah, I'll put that on. Like do you know what I mean? It's like there's nothing that really grabs me. But again, I enjoyed it when it came out, and I enjoy it when it's on. It's just not a go-to album for me. So it's that, to me, is like I probably should put it in the bottom two. Really, one of those.
Yeah, I'm torn because these Levitate and this were the first two I fully got on board with. There was a lot of fall drama around this time as well. And Touch Sensitive, Shake Off, This Perfect Day, Young Nev.
It's Nev Wilding on guitar, isn't it? And I like Nev Wilding's guitar playing. I weren't watching them in this period, so it's
Well, these two are very much Julia Adamson's kind of got a big say on it, and I really do like it. Birthday song's beautiful as well. In danger of us putting them all in passable, I'm kind of agreeing with Leon that get enough Fall fans together, we're never going to agree that any of them are bad. Somebody in the room will argue for it being in Fantastic Life or higher. Anyone else want to weigh in?
I'm happy to downgrade it on the basis of the argument put there, just to put something in the lower tier.
That can't be right, can it? That's not fair.
Come on, Touch Sensitive.
I really like this album. I think it's fun. There's some messy stuff and some scrappy stuff, but I think it kind of works as a thing. And you know, we'd had the implosion of the previous Fall. This is a new Fall doing new stuff in a different way. Yeah, you've got Julia continuing, big input. I think it holds up as a thing. You know, and I would choose to listen to it as a thing too. It's great fun. It's certainly no lower than passable. I would put it higher personally.
I'm overriding and I'm going for passable.
Yeah, I reckon it's better than Extricate, definitely. So I would say I feel like we've got two redundant tiers here because, for my money at least, unless we're including all the fucking, the kind of interim albums, like if we're going to include them, then we might get some in the rest of Paste.
Inferno says we haven't done Seminole yet.
Seminol's not in. Didn't count. Didn't make it.
Not doing Seminole.
Not real.
Oh, it probably is redundant then.
No, it's not an album.
They're in.
I read somewhere that I think the intention was to listen it like it is on vinyl, isn't it? 3 sides on a double album.
Yeah.
And I think it's 3 segments, and you're supposed to listen as like classical movements, I suppose, where there's the little group of songs. And isn't it centered around the Crying Marshall or something I read?
Well, Danny,
very loosely.
You probably know more than me, but from what I've read,
I thought you were still talking about Seminole Live.
All right, yeah. No. Great album.
Like, no. Changing the fence doesn't make the garden prettier.
I just wanted to say briefly that we're in a cult here, obviously, and we're not going to get people tricked into the cult unless we have the odd one. Maybe one in there is mad and bad and there is sad, because they won't believe that there should all been at least 1 or 2 till they get into the cult. So all
right, let's make this easy for ourselves, shall we? Reformation, post TLC, Danny and Al, where would you put that?
Go on, Danny, you go first.
Well, I'm fond of this. Again, it's another kind of post-implosion album, isn't it? And so it really suffers from them not really having had enough time to get some songs together. They were shoved in the studio really quickly just to get something on record and to document what that particular iteration of the Fall were doing. And in those terms, fine. I think there is some great ideas in there. There's some beginnings of some decent lyrics, I think. Had they had a bit more time to shape the songs, I think they might have been more interesting than they are. But I think that's just a reflection of the speed in which it was made. It's not one of my favourites, this one.
We've come to the same conclusion that it's not as bad as we first thought, but
I'm kind of like thinking it's a bit of a stinker. However, you've got Das.Boot on there, which is that I love that one. That's great. But yeah, you've also got Systematic Abuse.
The Right Stuff. Although I do like that too.
Yeah.
And Coaching Horses and Usher, an insult song, which is arguably the funniest Fall song.
There's a couple of spooky numbers in there as well, isn't there? And there's some decent stuff there, just trying to get out of the speed at which they were making it.
Let's not forget Barbato and McCord. I mean, great musicians were on, weren't they? Reformation is a fantastic song, I think. I'm a bit biased because I actually slept in that room that they did Reformation in over the Salutation pub a few years ago when I was drunk. So anyway, Reformation's a brilliant song in it, but I wouldn't go mad. It's not the best overall Fall album. It's a bit one note, I suppose.
I would say that's an understatement that it's not the best Fall album. But yeah, Danny, which level are you putting it on?
Oh, I hate putting anything lower than passable. Passable. Yeah, I wouldn't put it in Renegade Genius. I hate putting anything lower than passable, but if anything is lower than passable, it's probably that.
But how low is the question?
I can't give pace. There's stuff there. I do. Listen
just the Reformation alone, you can't put it in the bottom.
No, exactly.
Right. Mad and Bad. Alistair, you okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
All right. Let's go for a divisive one. Code Selfish. And we've got Ezra and Pip's back up. Ezra and Pip.
Go on, Ezra. What have you got to say about this? This is more your bag than mine.
Code Selfish.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's damn good. I would put this at Fantastic Life. I think the thing that really kiboshes it a little bit, along with a lot of the albums from this period, is that it's got a mushy production, and I can't feel the bass in it, and it feels like there should be a shit ton of bass in it because you've got real roaring tracks like Free Range, Everything Hurts. There's this thing with Fall albums. I think they kind of fall into two categories. There's the completely unimpeachable albums, and then there's the albums where you've got about a side or so of really fucking excellent music, and then the rest of it is made up of stuff that goes from great to good to listenable to, like, I'm sure they're taking the piss. Code Selfish is around about there for me, but as always, it's the tracks that I like which make it really good. So yeah, I would say Fantastic Life.
Pip?
Yeah, so with like some of these other albums around this era, I can listen past the production, and if the songs I like, I can get into them. But when we've been doing this, the only one that's really grown on me from that album is Free Range. The rest of the stuff I can sort of take or leave, really. And I think in the round, this is probably my least favourite Fall album. As a tongue-in-cheekily put in the chat, it's like Reformation TLC. No, I quite enjoy. There's standing jokes in my house now based on some of the lyrics of Systematic Abuse. So I'm quite fond of that album now. Whereas, I don't know, Code Selfish, it just doesn't grow on me. And it's Birmingham School of Business School. Whilst it's a really funny song title, it just annoys me as a song. And there's a bit too much of that going on with this album for me.
Where would you put it then, Phil?
It's right at the bottom for me. So
it's at the bottom.
So I guess that makes it passable, Ezra.
Yeah. For me, this is the biggest run of songs that I don't like in any part of the catalogue. Basically starting from Return, Time Enough for Last, Everything Hurts, Immortality, Two-Face, Just Waiting, So-Called Dangerous.
Just waiting is painful.
Yeah, I would say after Free Range, the entire rest of the album, I can't get on board with, but that's just me, my opinion. So we've got Fantastic Life down to Paste. So we're looking at somewhere in the middle. Anyone want to jump in on Code Selfish, Defend, or Damn?
You can't go in the very bottom. There's no such thing on the Fall, but yeah, I can't.
It's one of that kind of run of 3-4 albums, Mark's writing is quite linear, and I mean, there's a few songs on there that aren't like that, but he's writing really simple, straightforward lyrics that are less twisty than some of his other efforts, and I think that it feels flatter mood wise because of that too.
We certainly can't put it down in the bottom. That's been established. And with such a glowing review from Ezra, it's going to have to go impassable. But it's not passable. It's not.
I think that's fair.
It's very poor.
Yeah.
So actually, maybe this is a good time for me to read the Facebook stuff. So I put it on Facebook, and quite a lot of people jumped in and gave some really good opinions. And we had a good chat this week about strongest and weakest. And so I collated all of the votes, and Grotesque got the biggest number of likes, and followed then by Perverted and Live at the Witch Trials, then Dragnet, Wonderful, Frightening, Curious Orange, and then down at the bottom, there was a consensus that Reformation, Ersatz GB, Marshall Suite, and Code Selfish, and worryingly New Facts Emerge were the worst. I'm not sure if I agree with the internet on that, but the internet, at the end of the day, it's a person. We have to respect it like all other people. Light User Syndrome up next. We're going back to Steve and Spen.
Steve, you want to go first?
Okay, all right, mate. Yeah. I've had this in the car. I've still got a CD. So how old my car is these days. They're all moving on, aren't they, to online? P.O.D.C.A.S.T, great song. I enjoy driving along to Cheetah Mill. I absolutely adore Cheetah Mill. I met was it Mike Bennett, somewhere in Manchester, who produced. And he does the voice, doesn't he? And me and my lad just piss ourselves every time we get near Cheetah Mill. We start going, the lyrics are hilarious on that. We met Mike Bennett, so I'm very attached to this album for that track, if nothing else. He's singing with the Blockheads now, isn't he, Mike Bennett? He's the lead singer of the left of the Blockheads, but interesting character. It was worth having a drink with him. Not a very coherent.
Where are you putting it?
I'd put it in passable because I can't put everything higher. Yeah, I suppose overall.
Ben, what about you for Light User Syndrome?
When this come out, I didn't like it. I hated it, and I thought it was a very poor album. And since then, obviously, and I think this is true of a lot of the Fall albums, right? If you get an album that's come out, say, 5 years ago, you get 5 years to listen to it. Some of the others, we've had 35 years to listen to them, and it makes a difference. It does. So the more I listened to it, the more I liked it. But I still don't really like all of it. And it, like a lot of Fall albums for me, I love the Fall, but it's hostile. I like that, things like that. Great, Ollie I Know, and the Colosseum. Some of the perhaps more unusual ones. But I have a love-hate relationship with this one. I'm reluctant to say it, but I'm going to have to put it in the middle,
right? Because
I'm tempted to lower it a bit, but it is passable.
I'd agree with lowering it, Ben, because I do think the best thing about it is the LP sleeve, and that's mainly because it's got Ozzy Osbourne on there.
A young Ozzy, a transitioning Ozzy Osbourne.
I like the fact that Julia and Sai are like tiny, and they made them crouch. Nobody's happy.
It is an odd album, isn't it? Crazy, struggling, cobbled together album.
P.O.D.C.A.S.T, DIY Meat, Succession.
I've got a different take on this though, because I think for me it's everything that I want from the Fall. It's them being experimental, and when they do it well, they hit it out of the park, and when they don't, it's like some kind of curious car crash that you can't take your eyes off. I love all that, and I think there's some real standouts with it. I think for me, it's probably Julia Adamson's sort of strongest album as well. It's got some really great progress. Secession Man, And what is Secession Man apart from Secession Man?
Yeah, I'll go with that. I think, at its best, it's amazing. It's got a great opening track, great closing track, loads of filler. Seems to be a theme of infidelity and being misunderstood throughout the album, I think. The state of my brain in 96 when it came out, at which time I loved it, I used to think I completely understood every track on this album. So, got a deep relationship with it. And I think P.O.D.C.A.S.T is one of the best vocal performances Smith ever did.
Brilliant.
Relentless.
I still think the fact that it went out shows us that we are a very misguided group of people. I've been trying to find a way to bring it back in since we voted it out, but I haven't cracked it yet. So Stu, Invisible Stu's over there, he's made his own tier That's how much he loves this stuff.
Oh right, yeah.
He's done the whole thing, and he's put Light User in his second tier that he's called Good Shit. Up in Renegade Genius, he's got Perverted by Language, Hex, Ben Sinister, Grotesque, Room to Live, Dragnet, Remit, and Country on the Click. Wow, he's scored really higher than we did. Unbelievable. But I mean, that's a good range there. We can't argue with the rest of them. Good Shit is second tier. He's got things like Sublingual Tablet and Infotainment Scan, Imperial Wax, Wonderful and Frightening. And then down Impassable, he's been a bit more sensible than us. He's got Friends, Curious Orange, Levitate, Marshall Sweet, and Your Future Our Clutter. Gets interesting as he goes further down. He's got down in the fourth tier that he's called Slates and Slags. He's got Are You Our Missing Winner, Extricate, and Code Selfish. And then finally down at the bottom, in Paste, he has not held back. He's got Middle Class Revolt, Cerebral Caustic, Reformation, Ersatz GB, and Shift Work. He says, I know, he says, Perverted by Language is the most perfect fall document, consistent in theme and tone, while Ben Sinister is murky and atmospheric, and the only Lecky album that sounds consistently good. The Real New Fall album, last half is as good as the Fall ever were, and I would never make a compilation for anyone without including the past Mike Love Protein Kit, Protein Protection or Recovery Kit. And then finally, Remit, the standout album of later years, with songs developed just the right point where they retain a ramshackle character. The best the last band ever did. Studio were doing so well. But thanks for sharing. We respect you joining us on this journey. Let's move on to Sublingual Tablet. And we got Leon and Al.
It's not my favourite of the last period at all. I feel that it's not musically interesting enough. There's a lot of long, krautrocky type pieces, but they don't stand out a huge amount to me. Lyrically, there's some hilarious stuff though. The Piers Brosnan in Bedwetting Pills, and I think my standout track for me on there is Younger Cloth and Smith talking about the images of the writing on the page or whatever it is he's going on about. Pledge Live was fantastic actually. So I do like it, but I just don't think it stands out. For me, just below passable. I'm gonna be harsh on this one.
Ooh.
Fair enough.
I'd rate this quite highly, really, like, you know, for a later LP. And I think it is because the experimental krautrocky stuff.
Yeah.
Because I do kind of like that. I'd actually put this in the second tier.
I'm with you on the songs I really love, which is Dedication, Younger Cloth. I absolutely agree, amazing. Auto Chip, and yeah, Pledge, a revelation. It's not a song I'd paid much attention to. I don't think it justifies going quite high because there
Brendan,
is a bunch of stuff.
Don't we have to play Van Morrison now? Somebody's mentioned Fiberbuck Troll.
Why are you on
traditional.
Facebook? Go on.
Straight
Renegade
to the top.
Genius.
I think you're being so harsh there, mate, about this album.
It's higher than that, isn't it?
Yeah. It's straight to the top for me. I think it's brilliant. I think there's only like one
Genius.
track I'm not so keen on.
Are we going to rate all Van Morrison's albums after this?
Yeah. I am going to. Where am I going to put it? I'm going to put it.
Genius.
I'm going to put it in Fantastic Life. Got to respect the room, but I feel a lot of love for this album. It's going up in Fantastic Life. Next up, Max, if your voice can hold out, it's you and Danny, and we've got you talking about Levitate. I believe the first time I came across Danny was you on Steve's radio show talking about the song Levitate.
Yeah, I loved this album when it came out. I think some of that was just to do with, you know, what I was doing with my life. It just suited me at the time. The Fall were obviously going through some difficult periods, so there was a sense of relief as well. So I think you kind of felt here was the Fall falling apart, but doing something remarkable in that time. A lot of groups would not have been able to do that at all. And just the kind of a really aggressive kind of, I'm putting this out, deal with it. I love this album. It's my favorite Fall album. Not necessarily the best, but objectively, you know, but subjectively for me, I couldn't live without this album. I love it to bits. I can't explain why.
Where are we putting it?
Subjectively, it goes in Renegade Genius. Objectively, you'd probably have to put it a tier lower. But I no, Renegade Genius. Put it in Renegade Genius.
We'll see. We'll see if it can
Put
be
it in Renegade
dislodged.
Genius. Do
Max?
it, Brendan.
Max, what do you think about Levitate?
I think it's got a really unfortunate choice of first track for me because I was starting to kind of go off the F.A.L.L.O.U.T.P.O.D.C.A.S.T contemporary output before this album, and then I thought Marky Smith just lost it and was just a washed up old drum. And then when I heard like 10 Houses of Eve, which is like one of the worst washed up old drum songs that he's ever done, I was so viscerally furious. I wanted to take the CD out and smash it in half. Then a couple of years later, I kind of gave it another proper go and ended up really liking it. I still hate that first song though. But I think there's some absolute corkers on there. Doc Shanley's great. Whole gang, as we talked about in the last podcast. Better without Marky Smith on it. But I think it stands up as a really, really great album now.
Masquerade is a great. Do you not Masquerade? It has
got one about Spencer on there as well. How do you feel about that, Spen?
I like the positivity in the title.
Hey, it happens to the best of us.
I do love this album, though. It's genius. It's just the right side of experimental and weird and fragile, just about to spin out of control. Love it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm fully on board with it being Renegade Genius because 10 Hours of Eve I think is fantastic. Masquerade I love.
4.5 inch is just amazing.
Yeah,
that is like, put that on at number 11. Oh yeah.
Come and Stand at Your Door I really love, and there's a few missteps. I don't think that I'm a Mummy cover as much as I love the song. It don't fit for me, and we didn't need the Jap Kid instrumental version, but the album itself is very, very solid. It's going up there. It's a Renegade Genius. Anyone want to fight back against that?
No, not at all.
Beautiful.
Right. I'd take it down the tier myself, but
it's a brilliant mess.
Yes, it is indeed. So let's look at another brilliant mess now, and this is Ezra. You're up against Steve, and we're going to look at Friends Experiment.
Friends Experiment. All right, it's for me, it's the most vexatious album. I've mentioned this probably too many times already, but if you take in what they were doing at the time, like this could have been the Fall's White Album or something, because they had like Hey Luciani, they could have stuck on here, Markle Sinkers, they could have stuck on here, Twister, Guest Informant, which criminally they have about 30 seconds of on the actual album. And for my money, that's like very possibly one of the greatest ever tracks. And then some of the stuff that does get on the album is stuff like The Steak Place and Get a Hotel. And then they're not songs that like make me want to throw my stereo out the window or anything. Like I can sit and listen to them, but they're not the things that kind of like hold an album together. Like on the plus side, you've got Athlete Cured. The Cure was in No Pill, which is one of the greatest fucking choruses of all time ever. Bremen Nacht, Oswald Defense Lawyer, which I find fucking hilarious. But yeah, there's something a little bit anemic about it, and it's out of balance with the powerhouse that they actually were at the time.
Where's it going, Ezra?
Fantastic Life, of course.
Of course. That's good to go. Steve, what's your thoughts on...
I mean, I'd say probably my most problematic is Possible Sublingual Tablet. I don't think I love it as much as I should, but I love all full albums. But I mean, Athlete Cured, where they borrowed the bass line from Tonight I'm Gonna Rock You by Spinal Tap. I mean, what a move of genius. Carry Bag Man makes me laugh, probably because I have a load of carry bags, a load of crap in them. My wife. Friends Experiment, My Friends Don't Amount to One Hand. It's just it's a beautiful song. Victoria's a really good cover, I think. Even one of the Kinks said that.
Right, nice. Where are you putting it? Fantastic Life? You're going with Ezra?
Fantastic Life, yeah. I do like that.
I think like they'd been on a really strong sort of like run of form, and this was like a dip of form, like in the 1980s. But it's still better than some of the stuff that they put out in the 90s. So yeah.
If you're going to look around that time, when you had Friends Experiment, then Curious Orange and Seminal Live, it's the argument I think Ezra's making is the same one we've had before, that there's enough good stuff around there to do a fantastic, probably double album, and yet this is not the wisest of choices.
It just limps a bit, this album, doesn't it? It's got some great tunes on it, but I don't think it's as good as Light User Syndrome.
Fair enough. All right.
I'd have it with Reformation TLC, personally.
It's another one, isn't it, where the relationship with the band was suffering.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's diplomatically.
Definitely.
Yeah, I would have it lower. I would have it on Passable, I think, just simply because there's not enough standout tracks on it. I think Curious Orange is a bit better than Friends.
Yeah, and it looks nice having Friends next to Light Users, the only two other than that Reformation cover that has the band on, I think. So Al and Pip, you're going to be talking about something a little bit easier. I'm going to give you Dragnet.
This is very easy for me. It goes straight to the top. It's one of my favourite Fall albums, even though it's got a couple of tracks on it that are that sort of poppy ice cream van kind of gear shift in the album. I think as a whole it works really well, and it demonstrates everything that they were about, and it sets it's got its own atmosphere as an album that they don't really capture on anything else in the same way. And it's also the first thing that I really got into with them in terms of the sort of supernatural northern subject matter. And it was the first time that idea of taking stuff and doing it in your own back garden. You know, it's like you can write a vampire story, but write it in Wigan. The stuff of Doctor Who that I really like is like the stuff where he's stuck on Earth and it's like it's happening in somebody's kitchen that he's fighting the Cybermen. And to me, it's the fact that it's got that whole atmospheric kitchen sink type stuff. So straight to the top for me, dead easy.
Interesting area, given all of time and space, he does end up in Victorian Britain or the Blitz. Quite a lot, doesn't he? He or she. Psychic Dance Hall, Figure Walks, Before the Moon Falls, Mazereski's Daughter, Flat of Angle, Spectre versus Rector. Come on, Alistair. Where you putting it?
Well, we all know that Chock Stock is Phil's favourite Fall song of all time. So, yeah, we'll stick it at the top.
Yeah, easy, innit?
I want to say a bit about this because weirdly, despite the fact that most other than perhaps two songs, Chock Stock Your Heart Out, are not my favourite songs, but the rest of it, the songs are great. As an album, it must be something to do with the production. I find it hard to listen to as an album, so it's not my favourite album for that reason, even though the contents are objectively brilliant. It's following Live at the Witch Trials. There's a notable increase in the density of the lyrics. There's a lot more to the songs, if you like. There's more layers to them. Look at the annotated 4. You can really get under where he's getting some of his inspiration from it, which is great from that point of view. And I think it's one of the best album covers as well. The image is borrowed from the opening credits to Roger Corman's Haunted Palace, which was on TV just shortly before the album was recorded. So there's loads of stuff to play with this, and the density of it I really appreciate. It's just as an album, I just can't listen to it for some reason.
It's heavy, isn't it? It reminds me of when Bernard Sumner said that he doesn't really go back to Joy Division albums anymore. You can imagine why, because
nothing sounds like it. It's got that density. It's like a unique album, a bit like White Light, White Heater on the Corner or something. Nothing can really match it. The only thing I can think of is like some of the early Sun Ra albums in terms of his like muffled weirdness. Top tier.
Yeah.
I was just going to say about the cover. I was looking at it the other day. And if you look, you saw it split in half, black and white, obviously. If you look at the white half, it's got a little landscape.
Yeah.
It looks like a missing part from Live at the Witch Trials drawing. It's not.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the black bit on the left's a tree, isn't it? It's kind of how I always imagine it. It's a tree, and you're looking past the tree at the landscape.
It could be.
I can see it working.
Danny says it. I see that.
It's why there's the spider's web across it, but the spider's web obviously is inspired by the film, but
yeah,
it's
just a little landscape bit in the bottom right hand corner. I thought looked like a little extension of a landscape.
Yeah, it was.
To the left of Witch Trials, it's like they left a centre. It's not.
It's nicely there. isn't it?
Did you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Be nice as a gatefold.
Psychic dance.
It should have a category of its own, Dragnet. It's superlative album. Genius.
Absolutely. Well, let's keep on with the big uns and let's go for Country on the Click, which is a lot of people's favourites. Ben and Leon, what do you reckon to Real New Fall album, formerly Country on the Click?
Brilliant album. Top 5 of the whole decade for me, I would say. Sparta is their best pop song probably since, I don't know, Free Range. Every track's got something to offer. So for me, it stands with their very best, X, Nations, maybe Extra controversially. Gets the balance of electronic industriousness in sort of northern rock just right. Marky Smith's obviously put effort into every lyric and every track, even on the B-side of the album. So that's very top for me.
Sounds good, Spen.
Renegade Genius.
Yeah, it's good. This album, it's consistent, isn't it? I wouldn't put it quite at the top myself. I'd put it in Fantastic Life. There's some great tracks on it, some good looks. That I Ralathap track, that's great. Contraflow, love that. Funnily enough, it arrived in the reissue arrived today in the post.
Right.
It was released this week.
It's good, but it's not quite at the top for me. So second tier, I think. I do like it, and it's getting. I think the band there is finding its feet before it explodes again.
Right, it's Elena's first one, isn't it? And I think she makes a huge difference there.
I would have to go Renegade Genius, and I'll stop plugging myself because it's not that I make any money out of writing or stand-up. I'm not that good, but me and Steve Pringle were kindly asked to contribute to a review of it, which is on the So if anyone wants to have a listen to that, Steve Pringle's review is a bit more measured than mine. It's got to be said.
Nice. I am going to push it up to Renegade Genius because I do see how it's somewhere between the two, but on any given day I might lean towards that. Might move it later. I'll leave it there for now and see what happens.
For me, I always think of Janet, Johnny and James.
Yeah.
Such great Wipeout lyrics there.
Yeah. Have we all heard the cover of, I had until relatively recently, PJ Harvey covering Janet, Johnny and James?
Yeah.
I think Ding, right, is in her band.
Yes.
When he's not in the Pixies, getting around, isn't he? Danny and Max, let's go to the other end of the scale, possibly, to Cerebral Caustic.
Do you think it'd be useful for listeners if you just give a quick rundown of what's at the top and what's at the bottom, as a reminder?
No, they should fucking write it down, Alistair. But all right, go on. Renegade Genius so far, Wonderful and Frightening, This Nation Saving Grace, Levitate, Dragnet, Country on the Click, and then down at the bottom, we've not put anything other than Reformation in the bottom two categories. Everything is at least passable. Danny, Max, Cerebral Caustic.
I'm going to leap in here and say this is one of my least favourite albums. I didn't like it at the time, and it hasn't grown on me. Some of the songs are all right. Again, this might be as much to do with what was going on as is often the case in your own life, isn't it? It's just it didn't arrive at the right time for me, maybe. But looking at the track listing again just now, I struggle with this. I wouldn't put it right at the bottom just because I can't, but it would be low for me. None of it is satisfactory for me. I'm just not satisfied with this album.
Fair enough. Good. Max, Cerebral Caustic, or Cerebral Catsick, as someone described it this week.
This isn't very interesting. I'm going to agree 100% with every single word that Danny just said. But just hasn't grown on me at all.
I would have said that before we got into the second round, but the ones that have made it through, The Joke, Life Just Bounces, I love, The Aphid.
The Aphid.
Yeah, Bonkers in Phoenix, Pine Leaves. But yeah, that's not enough to save it.
The Joke's right, I'll give you that.
Pine Leaves has come back and it's probably going to go, I'm calling it. It's going to go all the way.
Pine Leaves is a good song, I think. The Joke, it rocks, but there's not lyrically. There's not a huge amount to it.
And even
it's
like
not in it for me. There's a better version, I think.
Yeah,
the version was better as well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's rock on and let's go to New Facts Emerge. Spen and Ezra, New Facts Emerge. This has been a little bit divisive. What do you reckon, Spen?
Put that at the top. Brilliant album. It's a genius album. I love all of it. As we get to number 11, 9 out of 10, I'm not so hot on that one. I admire its bloody mindedness to put that on it, but the rest of it, fantastic. I love it. It reminds me of a modern era kind of Dragnet, and it's like a last fuck it, I'm dying. have this. Love it. Brilliant album.
I agree. I think it's a couple versus Jobless Mid-30s. For someone to do that at that point in the career is just
that is a standout. That is a classic.
It's a splendid album.
It's completely off its tits. That genuinely odd epic Sabbath fucking Ventures, Diary of a Madman kind of thing. With is that one where he starts getting into Skippy the Bush Kangaroo as well?
Did he know he was dying when he made this?
He knew he was ill. Well, you know, I think we ought to say this is the post Eleanor one as well. She'd got and she has criticised the last iteration of the Fall for not allowing enough space for Mark's vocals, but I think he was doing something different with his vocals at this point, and I think had he not wanted it, he would have just got rid of them, wouldn't he? So I understand what she says. I don't necessarily personally agree with it. We should just recognise that Eleanor's gone, and that does make a difference to the sound here. I would agree. I think this is a great swan song.
It's great rollicking fun, isn't it? And again, personal note, I suppose. I'm in Victoria train station, Manchester, fairly regularly because the tram goes to Oldham. I just love being every time I go in, I have to sing Victoria train station massacre, and it's
been with the lads for a good chunk of time at that point, and it feels like it's the first one he lets them do what they want.
Yeah, there's a sort of they're sort of quite, I don't know, you can see the rocky for want of a better phrase, but a crude phrase, younger sort of sounding album.
For this period, the ones I reach for are Sublingual, Remit, and Your Future Our Clutter. I'm not a big fan of this album. I'm an enormous fan of 9 out of 10 Zitrukman and Couples versus Jobless, but a lot of the other songs, like a lot of the more rocking songs, and Victoria Train Station is also good. A lot of the rocking songs, they just don't convince me, they don't rock me enough. So I would put it at Fantastic Life.
I entirely agree with Ezra's view on that. Yeah, 9 out of 10 is the one which is really evocative for me, just in his subject matter, the lyric, and the way he dips out at the end and they just carry on without him on the last album is, just heartbreaking. That's amazing.
Yeah, I'll put it in Fantastic Life, then I think we can agree that it at least needs to be up there. So as we are going long, we've got about 7 or 8 left. What I'll do is I'll just pick one person. You get to throw it in there, and if nobody else argues, that's where it goes. So, Spen, Hex Induction Hour.
Right, now you might find this contentious. I love the album, but I don't think it's at the top. It's Fantastic Life.
Anybody?
No, I agree with that.
Top taste, without a doubt. that's within the top 3-4 LPs for me.
Renegade Genius for me. Unimpeachable.
I'm not sure about that. I think I've probably had a long time to listen it, and I think if we fast forward the same amount of time with a couple of the other albums, they'll have the same gravitas that has now. Hex split the audience at the time, didn't it?
I'm going with Fantastic Life.
No bloody way. It's not. It's that Hex is not as good as Witch Trials, and it's not as it should be top tier.
Yeah.
It's top tier stuff. That album is better than like 99% of pieces of vinyl that get put out.
All right, whatever. You win. It is the best record.
I knew that'd be contentious because I love it, don't get me wrong, but for me,
you can always trust the drummers. A bit of friction.
All I would say is that to listen front to back, it's not my favorite because maybe it isn't as wild and wacky as some of the others, but I don't think you can contest the songwriting quality too much. Al, you got Grotesque.
Yeah, all right, I'll stick that in top tier as well. But you see, it's like I'm very biased towards this shit, like the early Fall. There's some fucking great tunes on there. North Will Rise Again, Pay Your Rent. They were one of the finest bands on the fucking planet at this era, in my opinion. They were doing something that was quite original. Just going about things their own way. That's to be commended. There's not many bands that did sound that kind of original, and that originality just it shines through on this. And was it the third LP?
Yeah, which Dragnet, Grotesque. Yeah. I think Pay Your Rent English Skin New Face Now is probably the strongest opening of any album. I go as far as that.
There's no missteps on it. There's no fat at all. It's all muscle. It's brilliant.
Yeah,
pretty good. Yeah.
Alrighty, Steve, Infotainment Scan. We got Lost in Music. I'm going to Spain. It's a curse.
Lost in Music. So I use it in Church of the Fall. All of that. I think it's a brilliant cover. I've got a big thing for I'm going to Spain. Maybe that's controversial. I don't know, that cover. It's probably not as Glamrock is a great song, but it's probably a bit of don't feel like particularly coherent. album, maybe. Put it back because I can't put everything higher up.
Can I offer a counter?
Yes, please.
Yeah, this is Renegade Genius. The only song I can't remember is Service. It's probably brilliant because all the other songs on here are fucking great, apart from maybe the League of Bald-Headed Men. But Paranoia Man in Cheap Shit Room, Ladybird, Greengrass, Lost in Music, the best cover by a country mile. Glam Racket. I'm going to Spain. The second best cover by a country mile. It's a Curse. Very, very wow. Fantastic.
Fantastic life.
I'm happy to put it up higher.
There we go. All right, Leon, Room to Live.
Room to Live. Oh, quite a controversial one. I don't necessarily see it as being a dip in quality after Hex, just a kind of like a stripped back mirror image of Hex, really. I love it. There's sort of real under the radar tunes like Detective Instinct in Hard Life in Country, sort of minimalist haunting and all that folk horror kind of vibe to it. It sounds like a Northern English record, doesn't it? In the hills. Easy to see why people find it incomplete and unfinished, but I think Smith knew what he was doing. That's what he wanted. That's what he achieved. And Paper Visit's fantastic. So I would put it right up there. Maybe not. Would probably be a bit disingenuous to say is Renegade Genius, but I would definitely go Fantastic Life.
It's like a really short album now. I feel like it's too short to be up in the top tier. It's like if they took a couple of singles from around that time and stuck them on.
I love the anti-rural stuff coming out, Hard Life in the Country, like on Contraflow. I love that.
Yeah. I think it's a great, really wonky album, but I can imagine very divisive. And yes, Litz is only 6 songs. Arguably, Papal Visit is the difference between it being an album or an EP.
I would say if Trout Mass Replica is like a classic album of all time, then this must be above that, because this is exactly the same kind of backstory to it as an album, and the end product is way better than Trout Mass Replica, I would say. So
bloody hell, Phil.
Yeah, seriously. I've ate my words about this album. When Spen, you were on one of our first early episodes, and I was like, grumble, I don't really like Room to Live. And I've totally had my words about it as an album. It's a slab of genius.
Top tier for me, this one.
It's as good as Grotesque.
Every song's gone through, I think, except for Paper
Marquis Cha-Cha. What a tune as well. What a great single that is.
Yeah.
Brilliant lyric. Brilliant.
This is one where the group, I think, rate it low because of the circumstances in which it was made, and Steve Hannell has talked about that. But I think for Fall fans, I think actually there's loads of really great stuff on it. The circumstances in which it were made don't reflect the quality of the stuff we're hearing.
No, and I think the only thing that would persuade me, I've stuck it up there in Renegade Genius, and I will put the picture out so people can see it on Max. You persuaded me to some degree that like 6 or 7 songs isn't maybe quite enough, but I think I'm gonna go with it and put it up there in Renegade Genius. One of our newer patrons, Christopher Caitlin, has also sent his top 10. So he put Hex, Perverted by Language, Grotesque as his top 3, followed closer by Infotainment, Shift Work, and This Nation's Saving Grace. He hasn't given us a bottom 3. He's like us. We can't really put anything lower than halfway. Max, Perverted by Language.
Ooh, lucky me. Yeah, it's I don't know where to start. For a start, it's got what is probably my absolute all-time favourite Fall song in the neighbourhood of Infinity. You could listen to the song stripped down, weird bricks starting to come in, the hotel blowed up. One of their absolute best albums, I would say. Definitely genius.
Yeah, I don't think there's a bad song on there. I mean, I know people not particularly like Hotel Blow-Down, but I think Smile, I Feel Vox, this Action Definitive, Garden, Eat Yourself Fitter, it's just wall-to-wall beauty. Anybody want to chip in on Perverted by Language?
I agree with that. I think it is absolutely brilliant. There's nothing bad on it. The kind of the cliche about Fall titles is how knotty and long they are, and people doing parodies of Fall titles always do really long, knotty Fall titles, which I hate like that, because you've got Garden and Smile on here, which are one word, and yeah, it just makes me very angry, that kind of stuff. Brilliant album.
Hex and Definitive Strife Knot doesn't do them any favours, though, to be honest.
Taylor Swift's probably got some like that as well.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a cross between Grotesque and Room to Live. I mean, I love it.
For me, I always felt like, and I do really like Room to Live. I think Phil's over-egging the pudding a bit by saying it's better than Trout Mask Replica, which it obviously isn't. Not much is better than Trout Mask Replica. But I always felt like Room to Live was a bit of a MacGuffin, and then Perverted by Language was the really nice kind of response or furtheration or continuation of what they were doing with Hex Induction Hour, because Hex Induction Hour was such a, to my ears, like a revolutionary kind of album. With Perverted by Language, they kind of, they progress on the bones of what they were doing in Hex Induction Hour in a really nice and a really interesting way. And it's it's pretty much the end of that era, because then you've got the wonderful and frightening worlds of the Falls, and we've got the new era of Bricks and whatnot, and getting into your surf rock and your psychedelia, but a different kind of psychedelia, a slightly more colourful one. I think it's a peerless album. I've grown to really, 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 really love it.
Indeed.
I think it's perfect for full heads. You don't see it canonized like Nations in Hex, and I don't think it was very well rated at the time. I think Enemy gave it 5 out of 10 when it was originally reviewed, found it too dirgy and bland, but it offers the most sort of, if you commit to it, it offers a lot of rewards in terms of what it gives back to you as a long lasting album that you can listen to for years and years and get something out of it.
I think Carl Jung will be well into it. Ben Sinister, if you can remember it.
Which one's that?
I know.
It's a great album. It's a really nice experience to, in terms of putting it on, and there's loads of tunes that you go, oh yeah, this is great. As we've said a few times on the pod, it is a little bit sort of, I don't know, like it doesn't get its fingernails under your skin in the same way as the other albums do. I guess I'm going to throw this in passable, because I do like it when it's on, but I can't really remember it when it's not on.
Personally, I'd put this top tier, because I've been listening to it for decades and I'm quite familiar with it. And it's just you lot who sort of like have a bit of a sort of a memory lapse.
Go on, Hum Rod. How does it go?
Dum 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 dum. Oh no, that's Mansion.
That's Mansion. Yes, fast.
It's like a Beach Boys rhythm, isn't it?
I rest my case.
Mr. Pharmacist, great cover, probably the best one, if you ask me. I'll tell you where it says US 80s, 90s, Bournemouth Runner, Riddler. Come on.
Running great.
I'm going to overrule you a little bit and put it up in Fantastic Life, unless anybody thinks differently.
I agree with Alistair. I'd put it at the top. It's one of my absolute favourites. I love its brooding claustrophobia on 90% of the album.
I'd put it at the top just for shoulder pads.
I know you're a big fan of that one. Danny, Imperial Wax Solvent.
I really like this one. Yeah, there's some great stuff on there. I think probably I'd put it in. It just slightly perhaps tips into passable, just because I think the songs don't stand out individually as much as they might do on some of the others. It's less ramshackle than some of my favourites. I think it's strong. I think Torrig is on there as a kind of midpoint that's a bit weird, and for that final iteration of the group, it's one of their better ones, I think. But yeah, it just doesn't quite have the feel that I'm looking for in my real favourites, I would say.
I'm with you. I think it's hit and miss. Even stuff like both Kid Up Man and 50-Year-Old Man that people will often cite as a later classic doesn't really do it for me. It's meaty, it's pubby, and not in a way that I'm a big fan of.
You got some classics on there like Alton Towers and Exploding Chimney.
Yeah, Alton Towers is good.
This is where I came into the Falls as late as 2008. I can't believe it. Stood next to Mark Riley at Boddington's Brewery Hall when it was a live venue before they knocked it down. Not knowing he was Mark Riley, didn't know he'd been in the Falls, didn't know much about the Falls. Some great variety. This is jazzy and all sorts. It's great. Yeah, I'm a bit biased, but it's got to be at least second tier for me. This.
Yeah, I think it starts off orientation. It's going to be really weird, and then it gets very pubby for quite a big chunk. But they did that in the basement, the Nigel Godrich show, and that's one of the best.
50-Year-Old Man's a fantastic run.
For me, I love the run of Torrig, Can Summer, and Tommy Shooter. I love Can Summer, groovy track with Smith demanding that you don't move. I think it's like a bit of a knockoff, like LCD sound system in Talking Heads. I don't know if I got that right. That's how I hear it with all that sort of shaking about on stage. Is the four doing a really groovy dance track, and Marcus Smith saying they move around like an idiot. Brilliant.
Speaking of Mark Riley, he popped up on Twitter this week and he followed us, the Fall podcast, which is nice. And I instantly messaged him and said, "Come on the show." And he was very nice and he said, "I'm very busy," and he doesn't want to hear the sound of his own voice anymore, which is entirely understandable. But if we could get him on one day, that'd be quite nice, wouldn't it?
See if I can persuade him.
I'll
it'd be great if we can get him on and just talk about Frank Zybot.
That's GB. The contrarian in you is obviously going to say some things that you will later regret. But what?
That's funny. I knew you were going to pick me for this, and it was one of the Fall albums where I was like, because my wife is actually a big Fall fan, and a lot of the Fall albums I've got are on her computer. But this is not one of them. And it was one of those ones which I wanted to listen to because I was like, is this as bad as I think it might be? And I couldn't find it. I couldn't get around to listening to it. I've got a tiny creature screaming in my ear all the time. So yeah, maybe actually I would put this into the fourth rank. I don't know. It's got Nate Will Not Return though, and that's just brilliant, isn't it?
Age of Chang on it.
And Monocard is also good. And Cosmo 7 is fantastic.
It's not fantastic. You're wrong there. Greenway is fantastic.
All right, sorry. Well, like I said, I couldn't listen to it. I remember thinking it was fantastic, but at one point,
good Age of Chang is.
Yeah, can we have a bit of a listen to Age of Chang to jump
put Age of Chang on for a bit, Brad?
Vito, while you're loading up Age of Chang there, Phil, Rob, like I said, he's moved back to Canada and hopefully he can still join us. But he said he was never a Fall fan, and it's through this podcast that he's become a Fall fan. He said the Fall is like pizza, no matter how bad it is. It's still pretty good. He said, the best of the Fall for me is Ben Sinister, Grotesque, Middle Class Revolt, but actually this Nation's Saving Grace is the best. Whereas Reformation, Code Selfish, and Your Future Our Clutter don't quite stick with him yet. Thanks to all your Fall folks for helping me get into the band and doing the Lord's work. Respect you, Robert. Hope to see you soon.
Amen.
All right. That's enough. That's plenty.
Good Lord.
All right, I kick you off. I've revoked your privilege.
I reckon it must be Renegade Genius then, isn't it? I mean, that's some proper deconstruction there.
I was just going to say I hate this album. I just don't like it at all. There's some good ideas in some of the songs there, and I do quite like Greenway actually, and a couple of the others. But for me, it felt maybe it's to do with the production as much as anything. I just found it flat and forgettable when it came out. I think it's probably the only one I really, really feel that way about. I just never got on with it. I've probably spent more time trying to find out where all the clippings on the cover come from than I have actually listening to it.
Was it your blog the other week where you tracked down essentially all
90% I've got, yeah. So for example, top right, you've got that figure shouting. That's off the cover of a 1950s American magazine called Mail. And in the bottom left, that's a postcard from somewhere in Australia, I think.
Yeah.
So I kind of, instead of listening to it, I've spent all my time trying to find out where the clippings come from. So successful in most cases.
Awesome. It's bonkers.
Well, awesome's a word you could use, but
awesomely bonkers.
Yeah, this just has another one of those runs of songs. It's punctuated by a couple, but Cosmos 7 taking off, Mass Search, Happy Song, Monocard, Laptop Dog. I've seen them come Age of Chang. It's just like they just run over me every time. All right, last one. Pip, I'm coming to you, The Unutterable.
Well, funny enough, I was re-listening to this one last night. I really love this album. It's a great collection of songs and performances. I love the sort of mixture of production on it. It doesn't suffer the same kind of pub rock kind of stuff as some of the other sort of contemporary albums at the same time. He's like dipping back into some of that supernatural Lovecraft stuff as well, isn't he? And the reference to Emma James with like hot runes and things. It's like he's pulling on all the tropes that I really like for his lyrics. So I've got a big soft spot for this, and I just think the band are playing really well together. They're all complementing each other in what they do. So I'd be tempted to pop it top tier for Das Caterer alone. To be totally honest with you.
Come on, pumpkin soup.
Obviously second.
I am not going to allow it to go top tier, but I am going to put it on.
It's top tier. Come on,
Max.
Top tier.
Brendan, it is top tier though, isn't it?
I would mark it down one for Hands Up Billy. I mean, Hands Up Billy isn't great, surely.
It makes a strong case.
If you're going to put one album to send to the moon, leave on the moon for aliens, or one song, you got to put Dr. Book's Letter in.
Indeed, I know that.
I think the Untouchables kind of like Dragnet. It's done an electronic music album, but with like a really murky, dirty production, which works like really, really well. It suits it really well. Yeah, I mean, I think it's top tier, definitely.
All right, I've been persuaded. Top tier.
I think if that's going to be top tier, you've got to put Ben Sinister top tier.
No way, Vito.
Breaking out in this pub rock bar here.
Alistair, any more cheek from you, and it's going in paste.
It's got a really deep B-side, Unnutterable, as well, whereas a lot of the full albums, they might throw away some filler on the B-side. It gets really experimental, the B-side. Every track has got something of interest to it. It's like really tactile electronics and, good lyrics and stuff, even though they're all weird and wonderful.
I agree. F.A.L.L.O.U.T.P.O.D.C.A.S.T I listened to today.
F.A.L.L.O.U.T.P.O.D.C.A.S.T, Serum, brilliant.
Remarkably rounds it out. We did it. Hooray. Renegade Genius. We got Wonderful and Frightening, This Nation's Saving Grace, Levitate, Dragnet, Country on the Click, Hex. I know it's not really called Click, but that's what I'm going to call it. Hex Induction Hour, Grotesque, Room to Live, Perverted by Language and the Unutterable, solid. Fantastic Life, second tier is Heads Roll, Remit, Your Future Our Clutter. Curious Orange, Witch Trial, Sublingual Tablet, New Facts Emerged, Infotainment Scan, and Ben Sinister. That's set as well. Passable, Shift Work, Middle Class Revolt, Are You Our Missing Winner, Extricate, Marshall Sweet, Code Selfish, Light User Syndrome, Friends Experiment, Imperial Wax Solvent, and down in the fourth tier we have Reformation, Cerebral Caustic, and Earthsats GB. Nothing, Pace. I think we've done a good job though, lads. Patting ourselves on the back. Yeah. Ben had to go about an hour ago, but I'm sure he's here in spirit.
I personally would say that passable tier, loads of other bands have struggled to get in that passable tier on this.
Oh yeah, indeed. Any final words from the gallery?
You must get it.
It's been emotional. Danny Doyle,
well, I appreciate you giving us your time, and I hope we all enjoyed that trek. Much appreciated, everyone. And
just hoping Spen can join us next week for episode 100.
That took a while to register.
This was just a run through. We'll do the real one next week.
Practice one then.
Is this the dummy run?
No, much appreciated, Spen, Max, Leon, Danny, Ben, Steve, and all the people who've joined us, and the regular crew, and everyone. Thanks very much for dropping by, and take care. Hopefully we'll see you soon. Pip, could you play us that objective best of the fall to play us out?
See you later.
Max,
Bye.
You wouldn't want it any other way, would you?
Manchester City, how was it?
It's an attempt. It's a worthwhile attempt. The cad. The cad.
short, strong technique, horrible. That's the breath of air.
But my old mate, Jimmy hands up above me head. I don't want look in my eyes. What is it? 7, 8, 9. Well, shot for tea bags. Skinny Millings I've got. I know you're needing it when you wake up shaking.
Good time, you got Torres.
Shaking me.
There's a 30 grand.
I drink to get into it, not to get out of it.
You got Torres.
It's a different proportion.
It's infectious disease. You got Torres. I love Torres. Yeah.
The pre-non-MDM and jet years.
The post-net also DMA years. The MDMN years. The pre-black eyes and the tears years.
The MDMN years.
Thanks, E. Stacy, the present child of yours.
And the years.
Christmas bolero, bolero. Oh, I've heard it for the road, heard it for the road.
We're gonna find this way. And it's my church. Oh. Best thing in the world.